Welcome to the Spokesman Speaks, a podcast for farmers and ag professionals by the Iowa Farm Bureau, bringing you the news, experts, and educational insights that matter most. Now, here's your host.
Welcome to our May 6th edition of the Spokesman Speaks podcast. I'm Andrew Wheeler, and today we're updating you on Choose Iowa, a program through the Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship that provides value-added grants to farmers and markets Iowa-grown products to consumers. We'll also offer you a taste of the fascinating discussion that you'll hear at Iowa Farm Bureau's upcoming Economic Summit, which is June 14th in Ankeny. While it gained nationwide attention in 2020, the meat supply chain has been a hot topic for those of us in agriculture for many years now. So during the Economic Summit, we're bringing together a cattle farmer, a packer, and a retailer to discuss the trends, challenges, and opportunities that they see in America's meat supply chain during an hour-long panel discussion moderated by Iowa Farm Bureau economist Dr. Christopher Pudenz. For a glimpse into that upcoming Economic Summit conversation and why you'll want to be there, here's Spokesman Editor Tom Block with Christopher Pudenz.
Christopher, the 2024 Iowa Farm Bureau Economic Summit is coming up fast in just over a month from now. Can you give us an update on how planning for the conference is coming along?
Planning is going well. A lot of the big pieces are in place. Now it's just ironing out the details and getting ready to execute the plans, on that day on June 14th. So registrations are rolling in, and I think it's going to be a full house.
Yeah, it's a really packed agenda with something for everyone, no matter what kind of farm you have. But one of the sessions we wanted to discuss a little more is the meat supply chain panel. What are the conditions in the livestock industry that made Farm Bureau feel that it was important to bring a panel like this together?
If I could summarize the livestock industry in a single word right now, that word would be uncertainty. Now, I know that word always applies to agriculture and it always applies to livestock specifically, but still right now there are several things going on, across species that are really making things especially uncertain, and bringing together this panel is intended to answer questions related to that uncertainty. Focusing on swine first, the last 18 months have been really, really rough. According to Iowa State, estimated returns to fair to finish hogs in Iowa have averaged a loss, that's a negative number, of $20.85 per head. In that year and a half time span, only 3 individual months showed positive estimated returns, and all 3 of those months were in the single digits. As I've said before on this podcast, these estimates don't represent any single farm. They're naive estimates that don't include risk management. But still, they're a long-running and widely accepted industry barometer, and that barometer tells us that the industry has really been through the ringer lately. Things are starting to show improvement here this spring, with the March estimate at a loss of only $382 per head, but there's still a long way to go. Turning now to cattle, Iowa State's estimated returns vary quite a bit based on whether or not the cattle feeder in question placed yearling steers or if they placed lighter steer calves like 560s. Folks who placed lighter steer calves have been doing all right, while the losses to the folks who placed heavy yearling steers have been in the red since November. Now, it's important again to note that these estimates don't include risk management and that a lot of folks have used LRP and similar risk management practices in recent months. But still, that risk management is critical because uncertainty abounds in the market right now. Big questions in the market right now are, when and how do we start the rebuild of the beef herd? Will people keep buying beef despite persistent inflation that the Fed can't seem to tamp down? And how might exogenous shocks like animal disease throw a wrench in things? Getting answers to questions like these is exactly why we pulled this panel together.
And we all know how important livestock is to the economy of Iowa. Who are the members that you brought together for this panel, and why were they specifically chosen to take part?
The panel consists of 3 members. The first is Don Gales, who's the chairman and CEO of Friona Industries. It's a large Texas feedlot company that's headquartered in Amarillo. He was invited for several reasons. For starters, he brings decades of experience in cattle feeding to the table. He's also known for being an innovative businessman and a deep thinker. And finally, he has Midwest roots and understands Midwestern production systems. And he actually met with a group of our farmers when they traveled down to Texas to learn more about the Texas model of doing things back in 2022 during that Texas cattle feeding market study tour. The second panelist is Dr. Carl Skold. He's the head of Ag Econ at JBS, and he's held that position for almost a decade. Skold is a Cyclone. He has his PhD and master's in economics, Ag Econ specifically, from Iowa State University. And he works for JBS, which is a major player in both the cattle and swine markets here in the United States. JBS actually owns and operates 2 large market hog slaughter plants here in Iowa. So I'm excited to hear what he has to say about both markets, both swine and cattle, from his academic turned industry expert perspective. Finally, rounding out the panel is Jason Pride, who is the VP of Meat and Seafood at Hy-Vee. We invited Jason because at the end of the day, the value for the entire meat supply chain is derived from consumer decisions at the meat counter or consumer decisions at restaurants. Jason will be able to speak to these demand dynamics from Hy-Vee's perspective, and I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say about the substitution between proteins right now. Pork and beef and pork and chicken and beef and chicken.
Christopher, these are the kind of players that typically aren't in the same room together at the same time very often, much less on the same panel. How do you think their different perspectives will lead to some thought-provoking discussions among the panelists?
I think that discussion rooted in slightly different perspectives is exactly why we scheduled this as a panel rather than a series of presentations. Consider the question I mentioned before: when and how will we rebuild the U.S. cattle herd? From the retail perspective, this is an important question in terms of product price and availability. Will they have enough beef to put in the cooler, and what will the price be? From the packing industry's perspective, this question gets into dynamics related to shackle space and cattle procurement. And finally, back at the feeder level, this has as much to do with weather and disease as anything else. And of course, weather matters for retailers and packers, but definitely not in the same way. A hot and dry summer that, might be coming from this La Nina that everybody's been talking about, that might mean that consumers buy more beef and pork for grilling, but it also might mean that we delay the cattle herd rebuild another year when we have better pasture, perhaps. Exploring questions like this one in the context of this panel will give participants an opportunity to hear the back and forth that they couldn't hear literally anywhere else. And they might hear just the right tidbit that helps them make a better informed decision back on their specific farm.
And that's a great point you make about it being a panel as opposed to a series of presentations, a little bit more chance to investigate specific trains of thought. You're going to have the privilege of moderating the discussions, so I'm sure you'll have some probing questions. But what about audience interaction? Will there be time for the audience to ask a question or two?
Yes, the Q&A portion of this panel will be absolutely fascinating. And the audience will definitely have the opportunity to ask questions through a user-friendly website. It's not often that a farmer member, say, gets the opportunity to ask any single one of these experts, a really important question, let alone all 3 of them at the same time. So I'd say it's worth attending this Econ Summit as a whole, even just for the Q&A that, is going to follow this panel discussion.
Yeah, what do you hope attendees take away from the meat supply chain panel specifically and the Economic Summit as a whole?
What I hope that folks gain from the panel is a holistic view of the pressures and opportunities facing the meat supply chain from beginning to end. There's just so much going on right now, and so much of it is interconnected in really complex ways. And we're hoping that this panel and the Econ Summit as a whole is able to boil down some of those complex subjects into applicable knowledge that attendees can take back with them to their farm and make more informed decisions. Just a single piece of well-applied information can make a difference for returns for a farm for an entire year, and we want to set up our attendees for success to make those decisions.
And working near you, I know planning on this has been going on for several months, and as I mentioned at the top, it's a packed agenda. Hit some of the highlights of the other sessions that you and attendees have expressed excitement about.
So this is one of only 2 panels that we're doing during the day. The other panel is an ag lending and land value panel, and this features 3 industry experts in that space. Really excited to hear the interplay between those folks as well. We have Luis Martinez and Brenda Martinez. They are both of the Mexican Embassy in D.C., and they will be talking about the importance of the U.S.-Mexico agricultural trade relationship. And also, I can't go without mentioning that our keynote content will be from Austin Goolsby, who is the president of the Chicago Fed, and he'll be sitting down with Iowa Farm Bureau President Brett Johnson for a fireside chat the first day that he's able to speak with the media or the public following the June Federal Open Market Committee meeting. So there's been all this discussion about, will we have a cut? Will we not have a cut? Well, we're going to be hearing it straight from the source on that Friday.
And with the conference coming up fast, Christopher, that means a couple of deadlines are looming. Fill us in on some of those key details and where listeners can go for more information or to get registered.
So listeners can go to iowafarmbureau.com, and right there on the front page, there is a banner that says Iowa Farm Bureau Econ Summit. You can click a little button that says register now, and that'll take you to the page where you can then register for the summit. The cost is only $40 for Iowa Farm Bureau members, which is an absolute steal. It's $200 for non-members, but anyone can join. So it's definitely worth joining to get that $40 price. While people can register on into June, our hotel blocks with discounted rates are available through May 27th. So it's important that if you're going to be staying in the area that you register soon in order to take advantage of that discounted hotel block rate. Finally, spots are filling up fast, so you won't want to miss it. Register early, reserve your spot. Definitely worth your time.
As you heard, that's just the beginning. In addition to the meat supply chain panel, we'll have renowned Wall Street and Washington advisor Frank Kelly at the Economic Summit to dissect the impact of global economic and geopolitical forces on Iowa agriculture. We'll have Chicago Federal Reserve Bank President and CEO Austin Goolsbee share his thoughts on the U.S. macroeconomy, interest rates, and more. Plus, we'll have a panel of ag lending and farmland value experts, folks with expertise into America's trade relationship with Mexico, a leading grain marketing economist, and more. And we're packing all of that into one day, June 14th in Ankeny. If you haven't already, register now for Iowa Farm Bureau's Economic Summit using the link down in the notes for this podcast episode or by visiting iowafarmbureau.com/economic summit. Next up, Choose Iowa. At the top of the episode, you heard me mention a program through the Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship that's designed to help farmers add value while also encouraging consumers to buy the products being grown on Iowa farms. That program is also helping Iowa farms adopt labor-saving technology, freeing up more time for the innovation that drives agriculture forward. Tom Block caught up with Iowa Secretary of Agriculture Mike Naig during a Choose Iowa grant announcement in mid-April at Picket Fence Creamery outside of Woodward. And here's Tom's conversation with Secretary Naig.
Mike, thanks for talking to me here about the Choose Iowa program. We're on site at Picket Fence Creamery to announce some Choose Iowa Dairy Innovation Grants. Start off by just a little background about the Choose Iowa program in general, and then the new aspect with the dairy grants today.
You bet. Choose Iowa, right? We always say this is sort of the convergence of something good and maybe something not so good. One is the good side of this is you've got a very much a growing trend, a very popular trend of folks wanting to buy local, shop local, understand more about where their food comes from. That, of course, creates opportunities for farms and businesses to sell direct or take advantage of that emerging market, if you will. And then the second piece would be, well, we all experienced quite a disruption to the food and ag supply chain a few years ago. You know, we actually went into grocery stores and couldn't find what you were looking for, or they were limited in quantities. And really what we had is a convergence of those two things, and it just felt like the time was right to bring out the Choose Iowa program. And this is a branded program for Iowa-grown, Iowa-made, Iowa-raised products, and we launched it at the State Fair last year. Frankly, I couldn't think of a better place to do that launch than the great Iowa State Fair. And man, we have just been running hard ever since, signing up new members for Choose Iowa. Also a part of that then is this grant program. We've offered what we call value-added ag grants, just broadly anything related to that local and that building out that supply chain. So we've had everything from cut flowers to fruits and vegetables, lavender, certainly a lot of meat, and dairy had been a part of that broader Choose Iowa grant program. And what we saw is it was really a popular, very high demand for dairy specific. And Iowa State Dairy Association came to us and worked with the legislature last session And we ended up with this specific dairy grant program now that really does two things. One is to provide cost share for expanding on-farm dairy processing and cheese, yogurts, frozen yogurt, ice cream, those types of things. But the other piece is around labor-saving technology. Labor on farms broadly is a challenge. Labor on dairy farms specifically is a challenge, and especially for some of our smallest farms. And so most of the grant money in this round is actually going to go towards labor-saving technology, like installing robotic milkers and feed systems and health monitors. So it's really a twofold. One is to expand the processing side, but the other is to really go to the business side and address the labor challenges that many of our dairy farmers have.
And between the two programs, the value-added grants that were announced earlier this year and then the dairy innovation grants, what is the general funding for the program and how has that grown here over the past few years?
Yeah, so here's why we can confidently ask for, and I think we can argue that an investment in Choose Iowa is a good investment that'll have a return is, we'll be able to track over time that we get many dollars back out of each dollar that the state of Iowa invests. There's kind of an example that we use with Fresh from Florida, which is a very well-established, long-standing state-branded program, has a $22 return for every dollar invested. So obviously we're not there yet, but that's how we will track Choose Iowa over time. And so the dairy grants themselves are right at $750,000. The value-added grants are $463,000 in that program. And then we also have some just general funding for the Choose Iowa team, the program, Beth Romer, who runs the program for us and building websites and those types of things. So that's the general layout of the budget.
And these are competitive grants. There's a cost share aspect. You've had more applications than you can fund, which is a good problem to have.
Yeah, it is. I hate to look at a list of folks and say, well, shoot, we can't fund all of them. But actually, if you're running a program like this and we want to steward these dollars and I want to be able to show that return on the investment, then what you want is a highly competitive program. And that's been the case. I mean, we have demand that far exceeds the ability to fund each year, both in the value-added grants, but also in this first round of the dairy grants too. I was actually really impressed that there was the kind of demand and interest in this. It just tells me that we hit the spot with this one and for really both of them. But we also want to fund the very best projects that have the greatest impact on making more products available to consumers and giving farms more market opportunities. That's how we'll continue to build this program the correct way, is by funding really good projects that have that return.
And the program now has some legs under it in the second or third year. What are some success stories that you've seen?
Oh, I mean, I think the general awareness of both on the farm side and on the consumer side, right, that is already growing. But that's something that is going to be really exciting to track over time. What kind of brand awareness are we going to have? What kind of, again, return? What kind of economic impact, or how can we start tracking sales associated with the Choose Iowa brand? I mean, those are the things. Really, we're just laying that foundation today. But I would tell you that the things that get me most excited are when you especially meet families. Burkhart's are a good example of this here with Picket Fence Dairy. Is you've got, this is a multi-generation business. You've got mom and dad have son and daughter in the business. And I get to see that across the state. So some beginning farmers, some young farmers, and some next generation farmers that are associated with these projects, these businesses, these direct-to-consumer farms. That's exciting to me because many of us are just, we think about, maybe even worry about the next generation, beginning farmers, how difficult it is and always has been to start farming. Could Choose Iowa end up being one of the really viable and, in fact, really attractive avenues for folks to get into agriculture or pass something to the next generation?
Yeah, as you've mentioned, there is this newfound local food movement where the farmers want to be close to the consumer and the consumer wants to be closer to the farmer. What will this program do for consumers? What are you seeing on the retail end of it?
I should mention, too, there's also the experience side of this. We've got a lot of folks that are doing on-farm meals and agritourism. That'll be the other piece that I think has another benefit, which will be just the educational piece of this that builds out. So we're doing quite a bit of work right now with the Iowa Restaurant Association, with Iowa Tourism Office, trying to think about ways to really leverage getting local products into restaurants, onto menus, working with some really great chefs who are trying to think about, what's Iowa's kind of signature food. And what I kind of come back to is, gee, it feels an awful lot like a farm to fork is Iowa's signature sort of food or signature meal. And to me, that means protein, beef, pork, turkey, chicken at the center of the plate, surrounded by fresh seasonal vegetables and all the things that can go into that, with a nice dessert that happens to have some fruit, seasonal fruit. I mean, I think that's the kind of stuff that we're really excited about, is how do we continue to work with the culinary arts, with restaurants, get on menus, but also we've got some real interest on the part of some retailers, even some large retailers, to incorporate the Choose Iowa brand and run some promotions. And I think those are the things that we'll really look forward to really building out here in the years to come.
Yeah, we're the nation's breadbasket, right? There's no place better than Iowa.
Well, I say all the time that I've never really had to explain to anybody, and I don't care if I'm doing a trade mission around the world or somewhere else in the United States, that Iowa is an agriculture state. People know we've got this huge brand for agriculture. And so we start from this great foundation, and then it's about just building that out and connecting the dots for folks. So, there's a lot of exciting things happening here. And of course, the other piece, I'm just excited about the range of things happening. There's a ton of creativity out there. This is just a way to help de-risk and help incentivize some of those next steps that we want to see folks take on projects and expand their capacity and build new markets. And, at the end of this, I keep saying farmers will certainly benefit with having more market opportunities, but the Iowa consumer is going to really benefit by getting more of what they say they want.
And as the program continues, there's annual grants. Where can people go for more information?
Yeah, so the place to go, it's chooseiowa.com. It's got all the information that you need about becoming a member or the various grant programs that we do offer. I keep saying this too. We launch and relaunch Choose Iowa all the time. It just tells you that there's that level of activity going on. So check back often, and you'll be able to keep up with and sign up for social media. You can follow us on Facebook and etc. And really just keep your eyes out for Choose Iowa. I think you're going to be seeing it more and more.
Thanks, Mike. I'm sure we have a number of listeners who are intrigued by the idea of implementing some new labor-saving technology or adding value to products grown on their farms. If that's you, you'll be happy to know that the Iowa Department of Agriculture did receive state funding that Secretary Naig was hoping for in his interview, so you can expect to see even more from Choose Iowa in the months ahead. For now, let's bring on Beth Romer, the director in charge of the Choose Iowa program. Tom Block takes it from here.
Beth, thanks for taking some time out to talk with me here. You are the program director of the Choose Iowa program. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what attracted you to this position.
It is kind of like a dream come true to be in this position. I grew up on a century farm in the Midwest, and there wasn't a space at the time when I graduated college for me to go back and join the farm at that time, but I knew I wanted to stay in agriculture. So I've had various jobs in different aspects of agriculture and helping with communications, branding, and ended up at one point in North Carolina with the Got to Be NC brand program. And I loved telling the community and the state in North Carolina about their local farms and the foods and the beverages that people could enjoy that are local through the Got to Be NC program, local in that area. And when I found out that we were getting to move back to Iowa and reconnect, I loved being in the Department of Agriculture there. And immediately I started looking for opportunities here. And I was thrilled when I found out that the Department of Ag here in Iowa wanted to launch Choose Iowa. It was a program that started briefly a few years earlier and unfortunately just wasn't able to take off at the time. And so when the department wanted to bring it back and to roll it out and have someone dedicated and focused on the Choose Iowa program, I was so thrilled when they picked me and let me come on board. And it's just been so much fun since then to be able to work on the foundation of rolling out the program statewide, inviting people to support local, support your neighbors, and look for foods and beverages that use ingredients that are grown, raised, and made here in Iowa.
So it was really a perfect kind of convergence of events for you to be able to come back to Iowa and launch this program. How long have you been on board, and have you been able to take some of the ideas from North Carolina and apply them here in Iowa?
I joined the Department of Agriculture in Iowa in November of 2022. So I've been on board about a year and a half. And since then, only a couple weeks ago, we had our second person join the Choose Iowa program full time. Her name is Maria, and I'm so excited she's on board. So we doubled our staff size now, beyond me, to have Maria on board. But I say we because the department as a whole has been so supportive, and so many other team members in the department have been a huge, huge support and helping with ideas, staffing at events, helping share the word, helping with different opportunities to reach new audiences. There are several ideas that I saw work really well in other states, met with several other people from other states as well. It was really fun getting to know several other state program leaders and see several ideas that have worked well in other areas that may work well here. And then also a few times might have learned a few things from others' experiences that we can hopefully avoid, learning through their examples. But mostly just getting to hear with conversations of, well, if you were to start your program over in, today's day and age, what are things that you would definitely do again? What are things that you would try differently? Or what have you seen work really well recently? And those kinds of ideas we've been able to evaluate and to see what can fit really well here. As well as when the secretary is out and about and speaking with people, he does such a great job of listening. And he's full of passion and excitement for Iowa's agriculture. So it's really been a team effort of a lot of different aspects coming together.
And one aspect of the program is grants. A month or two ago, there were several grants announced. And then today, it was announced a new portion of the program is the Dairy Innovation Grants, which is a vast program. Tell us a little bit specifically about these Dairy Innovation Grants and what they're being used for and the goal of the program.
Yeah, the Dairy Innovation Grants. This is so exciting. So we've had the value added grants within Choose Iowa for 3 years now. Last month, we did announce the third round or the third year of funding for new projects. And then today we just got to announce the 20 recipients of the $750,000 of funding for the Dairy Innovation Grant. And this was through a lot of work with the Iowa State Dairy Association, the Department of Agriculture, to bring about this grant. We really appreciate the legislature designating these funds to support the dairy industry in Iowa. It's critical and very much needed. And in fact, just to better demonstrate the need for this support for a critical industry that we have, we received 50 different grant applications, and we were so impressed with the quality and the caliber of the applications. This was the first year of this grant, and the caliber of those applications was outstanding. It was so competitive. When we went to score these with the scoring committee, they reviewed them, and of those being awarded, the points that those applications received were so high. And unfortunately, we just ran out of funding before all the deserving applications were able to receive funding. But congratulations to everyone that submitted an application, took that time to put together the information that was asked for of, what kind of a project would you do that would help expand your business, to make it more efficient, to reduce your labor, or to expand your processing on farm. And we were so excited with the ideas that were submitted and just really encouraged by what we see ahead for the dairy industry.
Yeah, what are some of the types of projects that these grants are being used for?
So for on-farm processing, we saw applications. For example, Jeff and Jill hosted our announcement event today. With the grant funds they're receiving, they are purchasing pasteurizing equipment. And as Jeff shared, this is going to reduce the amount of time that they have to spend from 30 or 40 hours a week just pasteurizing the milk that they use to then further process their dairy products. This will reduce it down to about 7 hours a week, so they can invest that time in other aspects of their business, which will help them to grow. So anything after the milk has been produced, then to be able to make it into a product that can be enjoyed unappreciated. Then the other side of the dairy grant was for labor reducing technology. And these projects were for things like equipment like robotic milkers to help with reducing the labor related to milking, also health monitoring systems. There were several applications related to that. Feed pushers or manure scrapers, those were some common themes where the labor could be greatly reduced with those kinds of equipment as well.
And the grants are just one aspect of the program. Let's talk about other aspects and maybe what consumers might see on the marketing and the retail side. What are the program's goals in terms of creating a branding really for these Iowa-grown products?
The brand side of Choose Iowa, the goal is using the logo, the Choose Iowa logo, to identify foods and beverages in Iowa that are made with ag products that are grown, raised, and made here in Iowa. So if you see a food item at a farmer's market, at a grocery store, at a restaurant on the menu, and you see the Choose Iowa logo, you know that that food item, that beverage, has at least one ingredient that's from Iowa. And similar to other brand programs, we want to celebrate and support and make it easier to know which foods and beverages are from Iowa. And so the businesses who become a member of the brand program, they meet minimum criteria, and we want the brand to mean something. So there are criteria that the legislature has approved. So for honey, for dairy products, for meats and proteins, for produce, there are criteria for how the logo can be used. But the end goal is to identify those foods and beverages that are from Iowa.
And these products, as the program grows, can be found, I suppose, at farmers markets, retail outlets, just about anywhere consumers look, they can find that logo?
That's correct. So from anything from purchasing direct from farmers and from local Iowa food businesses to going to your local grocery store. And as this program rolls out, you'll be seeing the logo more. We have even some farmers markets themselves are signing up as members and then encouraging the vendors within the market to sign up as a member so that they can use the logo as well to identify their foods. And some fantastic chefs and restaurants in the state have been joining with the Choose Iowa brand and idea to be able to label their different dishes in their menus using Iowa ingredients. So we're so excited to see the logo catching on and rolling out across the state on food labels and in other uses.
These grants, like I said, are one aspect of the program, and now the work begins. We've seen already some of these projects be started on the farm. You mentioned in your comments, the goal is to have these projects completed and on the ground relatively quickly.
So the way the Choose Iowa grants work is that they are a cost share grant and that there is a match. So everyone that receives Choose Iowa grant funding, they do their project and then they submit receipts for the items that were part of their project budget. And then from that, because there's a one-to-one match, they are reimbursed the grant funds or half of their project cost up to the maximum grant amount. So that really incentivizes everyone that receives the grant funding to get their project done. There is a 12-month time frame that the grant projects are done within. Many of the grant projects are completed well before that, but some of them take just a little longer with the purchasing and things depending upon shipping for specialized equipment. But it's been so exciting to see, like on the value-added side of things, with the value-added grants, some of the projects were for cideries or wineries. We've had breweries that have received funding. Flower farms, cut flower farms, and lavender farms have received funding. And it's been so neat to see the variety of projects on the value-added side. And now it's been really neat to see the applications come in from the dairy grant. I can't wait to see a year from now what all of these dairies have accomplished, and it'll be exciting to see the applications we get next year for the dairy grant as well, and the new projects and the ideas that people have for growth for their businesses in another year.
Thanks, Beth. Iowa agriculture has a ton of value to offer consumers, and we're excited to see how Choose Iowa continues to elevate that value for audiences across the state. If you'd like to learn more about the Choose Iowa program, remember to check out chooseiowa.com. That's all for this edition of the Spokesman Speaks podcast. We hope you enjoyed it and that you'll join us for the next one on May 20th. Thank you for doing the work that inspires everything we do here at the Iowa Farm Bureau, and thanks for listening to the Spokesman Speaks.
Thank you for listening to the Spokesman Speaks, a podcast by Iowa Farm Bureau. Check out more podcast episodes at iowafarmbureau.com/podcast. You can also find and subscribe to the Spokesman Speaks podcast in the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and other popular podcast apps. We appreciate your ratings and reviews, and we welcome you to email us your feedback at podcast@ifbf.org.